Good morning, everyone. I hope I'm audible, loud and clear. All right. So, it's great to be in front of all of you here today, and also very nice to be introduced as a drummer. I'm an economist. I write on the regional economy, and my recent book is about that. I've worked in the area of data and technology, and my last role was as Director Analytics, Insights and Impact at the Tata Trusts. So my interests have spanned a mix of business, technology and social good, and I think it has taken me many years to myself embrace the different versions of who I am and my interests across these seemingly different things. So if there's anything I would like you to take away from today's conversation, it would be my effort to connect the dots across one vector of these ideas, which is what is happening with the regional economy and why is it important in this room full of people who are enthusiasts on the area of data and technology. And one important lever I will try to build in through this is the question of our agency. And by agency, I mean our influence on some of these things that are changing the world. And it has taken me time and many years to embrace this agency myself. And I hope if I'm able to, share a little bit of that with you today, I will consider my job done. So yeah, let's look at where India stands today. And I think we're all very, very excited, right, with where India is today. And where are we in terms of our GDP? We are, I think, would anyone like to take a guess? I have a slide up there for you. You just have to read the numbers. We are ranked as the 5th largest. Yes, we are ranked as the 5th largest today in terms of GDP, which is way ahead from where things used to be when all of us were growing up, right? Some in the room more so, some like me in the middle, and some like you who are getting started and are all gung-ho about what this opportunity means for you in terms of your career, lives, job growth, right? And while we are also gung-ho about these big, huge $1 trillion goals, so we are currently, India is at $3.73 trillion. And we have big ambitions about where we want to go. And data and technology is expected to be a huge lever, right? It is our source of competitive advantage in the world today. Let me pause for a minute and ask you, where do you think we are if we looked at this in terms of per capita terms? We spoke of GDP absolute, but GDP per capita, which means when you divide the total value of this by the number of people in this country, in each country, where are we ranked as India? Peer a little closer, we are number 138. So for all our great ambitions, on the global stage in per capita terms, we are ranked 138. Ahead of us is Venezuela, Sri Lanka, Lebanon, Honduras, Sao Tome and Principe, you don't even know where that is on the map, right? Bangladesh has actually powered ahead of us in recent years. So there is this big question that while we are growing in absolute terms, our relative story needs a lot of work. And what does this mean? I tried to go through this a little more in detail to understand what is happening in India, what is happening in such emerging markets, and why are some regions growing more than others. This is the story of inequality alongside large, great growth. Until we unlock some of those pockets of access, we are not going to be able to hit our big numbers. It will keep holding you back, right? So in my book, this is one of the, this map is actually a finding based on a lot of data that I analyzed across a number of vectors. And so output, employment, and access. If we look across parameters like these, we can actually divide India into this picture which without going into too much detail, what is it telling you? It is telling you that we are actually very different at a regional level, right? It's telling you that if you look at coastal Maharashtra, which is in dark, it shows a cluster called growth hubs. There are so many other parts of India, the lighter yellows are those which are not doing so well on many parameters. We have to classify them differently, right? So our country is not one India, it is many Indias. And my effort through the book, through the work that I do, or through the various leaders that I work with, is to unpack this a little better, to help us strategize and plan for this India a little better, so that we are able to identify where will growth for tomorrow come from. Some of those are not the million-plus cities, they are the smaller towns, they are villages of India. These are the regions where 90% of our population lives, breathes, buys products, consumes services, who are now getting onto the digital journey and who are going to be your customers. If not already today, then definitely tomorrow. How well do we understand this India? And isn't it therefore even more imperative, especially when so much of global capital is coming into India? A lot of our companies have our headquarters in the US, in UK, etc., right? They are looking to you to come to ideas, and even if they don't know that they are looking to you, you need to make them look to you for ideas about what is going to work in one of the world's most vibrant and emerging markets. So my journey of trying to find agency among all this work that I'm doing with business, with government, led me to put together this book on the regional economy. I've called it Regional Economic Diversity. You can keep an acronym RED in your mind, because I think we have to paint the world red, and we have to bring the vibrance that we believe is true about emerging markets to regions where it's not yet going, and in places where this vibrance already exists, like cities like Bangalore, right? Very vibrant parts of our country. How do we leverage the access and the networks we have better to make this story happen? So the choice of locations, where do you invest more? Where do the next set of ATMs come up? Where does a business decide to set up its next unit? Where do you need to hire fresh teams? How do you set targets for your sales force? And how do you build a technological backbone that is going to talk to all of this and bridge it together? Is going to be very important in the next 2 decades. And so I believe that future-ready leaders in India and the world need to understand the many Indias. And one of my efforts over these years and in the time to come is going to be to unpack this more and more. So what have I tried to do when we talk about regions? I'm talking about sub-state. See, when we go to Davos and various other places, we talk about India and its big ambitions. At best, we'll talk about Telangana, right? We'll talk about Maharashtra. We have kiosks at events like these at a global stage, right? That put the spotlight at best at a state level. My data shows that the variations at a regional level are completely masked by the national or the state level narrative. How employment is moving, which sectors are firing. We need to go granular to be able to really unpack things better. And so I look at the principle of homogeneity. There is the NSS Frame that the National Sample Survey of India, some very bright and intelligent people over the years at the Central Statistics Organization have put together this frame. And so I believe that the NSS is a great frame. So for example, Madhya Pradesh, I'm just putting it out there for you. The NSS divides Madhya Pradesh into 6 contiguous regions, which are similar on different vectors. And by this classification, we can look at India as a set of 88 regions. Not 600 plus districts, which is too big a number to really plan for. Not as monoliths as states, because we all know that our states by themselves have so much variation within. If I offered you a job role at Belgaum as opposed to Bangalore, you're going to think 10 times about it. Or you may embrace it with both arms and say, give me great education, Wi-Fi and healthcare facilities and I'll move tomorrow, right? So location choice is something that affects all of us and is an underlying thing in how the world is going to move and how we can plan our technological moves much better. Now, 2-3 concepts that I have come to learn about and which I would like to share with you. What do we mean by access? I called the talk driving regional access, right, using data and tech. If we decode access, access is basically this, right? A lot in the hands of few and many who still don't have access. The big story of growth happens when a lot more of these hands get strengthened. And here we are talking about access to skills, access to finance, access to markets, infra, and a very important underlying layer, which is access to technology. And today as a country, we have tools, we have skill sets much stronger on the technology vector than we did 10 years ago. I have lived this process. I'm an economist by training. I did my MBA. I joined the Tata Group as part of the TAS. And somewhere around 2015-16, I started building a piece of work which ended up becoming a practice called data-driven governance. I had to learn technology. I'm not a technologist by training. I had to hire team members who understand technology very well, learn from them. And so we built this work where we then partnered with the Niti Aayog, Smart Cities Mission, and various other players to say that if data and technology works very well, is beginning to work well for the private sector, why shouldn't public sector service delivery, like health, education, skills, benefit from this? Why can we step out and get an Uber, but a district collector steps out for a tour and is not able to see whether the primary health center has all its equipment, has a doctor in place, is the teacher visiting? Weighing scales are not there in some of the A&M centers. We can use data to bring a lot of this together. We need, of course, human intuition, influence, and the will to do. But these tools can be very powerful aids in the hands of decision makers. So a good understanding of the regional context is important. I try to build on this to my book. And to this particular audience, I would like to talk about developing agency. We are not mere bystanders in this whole story. You know, we sometimes seem to think that this is the job of government, or this is the job of big business with deep pockets, you know. And the likes of Mr. Tata and Mr. Nandan Nilekani have a lot to do in making the story happen. But it is not like you and I don't have any agency. You know, and we need to be aware of that. We need to know that we also sit in meeting rooms, in boardrooms, in corridors that take decisions of building thoughtful technology, of being a little ahead of the curve. And so sometimes, although we all have influence, it takes a lifetime to realize it. I have tried to embrace this in the different roles that I play in trying to piece these puzzles together. And I would urge you, I think it's a very fulfilling experience if we are willing to, you know, step out of our comfort zone a little bit to do some of these things. I never thought I'd be writing a book. I never thought that, you know, I'd be getting back to playing music and doing other such things. But I think if you make space for the things in your life that you think are important, it is possible to piece these seemingly disjointed things together. And so, agency, which I tried to build in my role at the trust and, you know, in various other things, have been through the power of collaboration. You cannot do everything alone. But if you build bridges with government departments, with philanthropy, with business, across government, Niti Aayog, the international agencies, World Economic Forum, I've over time realized that building some of these bridges means there is so much you can do to make change happen. And so one quick takeaway here for this group is that the big picture India story is good until the capital comes into the country. Once people have invested, once your big business plan is bought into, you have to go granular to make it happen. I've put some of the nightlights data of Bangalore if you look at over 1992 to 2021, you can see how growth is concentrated in Bangalore, but the dark parts are areas that are not lit up during the night. So there's so much to be done to bring the benefits of Bangalore to other parts of Karnataka itself, not just the rest of the country. And so investing further in digital public goods, regionally connected systems, building on your integrated command and control centers that have so much data flowing into every smart city. There is so much information coming into our IoT devices. Are there tools and things that we can build on these? I believe that one layer on GST data is essential if we are going to be able to talk of, output and value creation happening at a local level. And that's one of the things I'm working on. And in my role, having pioneered India's early investments in, digital public goods, I did not know how big it would become. But I see this as a very, very important story in the big economic growth story happening in India and in bringing down inequality, which will help connect the dots. And the key takeaway number 2 is to just do it. Because I believe that the most intuitively well-placed people as agents of change are women. We feel about these issues, right? We face several barriers, so I think it is possible if we are able to, act as agents ourselves. And so if anybody wants to volunteer, I have a couple of interesting projects where a few serious-minded people we will bring in to, build on some of these ideas. You can scan this QR code and and get connected. We are doing a bit of shortlisting of some interesting people who are going to do work along these lines. So please join me on this journey to look at decoding the many India's developing use cases and solving for regional access. Thank you very much. And if we have a couple of minutes, I will take a few questions, but I will let the moderator take a call on that. All right, great. So if we have a couple of questions, I'd love to take them. Yes, please.
Hi Poornima, good morning. Harneet this side from Genpact. I was very intrigued by the data that you were showing in terms of cluster and followed by the next slide where you showed Madhya Pradesh being from the NSS Frame. So in case if you want to lighten up the darker areas from the tech and data perspective, regional access, then are there any programs or whom we can partner with? Because I come from Chhattisgarh, so that just, took my interest.
Sure, no, please reach out to me. We are doing work around how do you build digital public goods to solve for some of these. There is this organization, E-Governments Foundation, they're based in Bangalore, I'm on their advisory board. And we are looking at how municipal services in many cities which are beyond the, the ones we naturally believe in, can build tech systems. Every municipality needs an ERP, so we are working on some of that. We actually have data. Chhattisgarh, interestingly, is one of the most agrarian clusters, and with the exception of the Raipur region, which is central Chhattisgarh, the other two get classified in what I would call acute. So there's a lot of work to be done in some of these regions. So please sign up, there are things that we can do together.
Would love to do that, but in general, like if suppose somebody from Bangalore just want to contribute virtually and want to learn a little more rather than like more engagement, where can they find out how they can contribute? Because you were bringing a very interesting point that we can also act as an agency in the meeting room or influencing that, the regional access should be there in the acute or agrarian areas. So any tip that you can give for general public?
I think one thing is that there is this open data portal, which is the Smart Cities mission has put out some of the city level information on their open data portal. I was on the working group, so I know that a fair amount of work has been done to try and ratify the kind of data that is sitting there. There is information on the Niti Aayog aspirational districts segment, so have a look at those reports. And some of the data that I have been working on, I will be putting up on my site also. I do realize that a lot of people want to look at the data and analyze it themselves. So 2-3 of these resources I think you can readily have a look at.
Awesome, thank you.
I have one question. So there are two vectors in the GDP. One, the power masters in the GDP path. If we look at US and China, their GDP is either flat or negative. India going to be fourth by 29, third by 35. obviously the path ahead after third will become difficult. But I look at the access point and clusters you brought up. We are very centralized. To make it decentralized, I think we need to fix our participation from the per capita population, because still 12% are taxpayers, 88% even government do not have information what income they are having, which brings our overall GDP number at the larger scale very down. So how do you think the road after third to become equally participation with US and China after 35 will make us a world leader?
Great question. What's your good name?
My name is Punish Sharma. We are representing Sun Life Financial.
All right, thank you, Puneet. That is a very, very good question. And I think that actually talks to this part, that we will coast along and grow if we continue the way we are doing now. But till we are able to identify pockets of competitive advantage in the regions that need more work, even regions that are doing well, but more so regions that have not yet reached their level of saturation, for them to accelerate. So the tier 2 cities, the small towns, a lot of these are going to need business investment, but also public sector planning, which means unlocking entrepreneurship. So I am very excited about some of the companies that have now started taking their grassroots teams, which are based in some of the tier 2, tier 3 cities. They are comfortable with operating with people based there, because that means you're also creating entrepreneurs there, they are unlocking value. The second part is, I think, with UPI and the digital payments happening a lot more, building tools on top of these which unlock capital flow in the regional economy are going to be the second step. But personally, if you ask me, I think we are still going to be away from that unless we invest as a country in our data and digital systems. Even today, our data sets don't talk to each other. And different companies create things separately, but we are still operating in silos. If we want it, we have to build more on India Stack, build more on UPI, and have ways which even the data that sits with the government, those data sets need to talk to each other for us to be able to say that this is the larger narrative. You and I don't need to sit and reinvent the wheel every time. So I believe that data and digital needs to be thought of as infrastructure. And if we think about it like that, we will invest in it the way we invest in roads, the way we are investing in, you need somebody like a Nitin Gadkari who's going to push the information highway also to unlock at least the information pathways, so that those who are building products, building services can build on top of that.
Thank you, Poornima. Thank you so much for the talk.